Hello and welcome. This session is sponsored by Data Network Solutions. DNS is a 21-year-old value-added reseller based here in the Carolinas. We have a large staff of local engineers to help design and implement our clients' technology needs, from security to networking to data center and to the cloud. The current COVID-19 situation has created lots of disruption and technology challenges and shifts for IT. We are happy to help guide you through it. Contact tracking through your network, VPN and VDI, software-defined networking, local and WFH security, thermal scanners. The situation has created tremendous technology shifts, and we're helping our clients adapt. Please let us know if we can be of any assistance. Thank you for coming, and now I'll turn it over to Melissa Coleman.
Good afternoon. I'm not sure how many more is going to come in, probably a small group. Oh, sorry. Probably a small group we're going to have this afternoon. I know when, we're in the office working either remotely or being in a hybrid situation, some people can pop in, pop out. So with the group that we do have, this is going to be a very light conversation. And it's just giving you an overview of what the city of Fayetteville has done during the pandemic. I think my title was probably a little confusing, but really I wanted to see how we are being very innovative in this pandemic world using technology and really using the tools that we have already in place. And that's what we found in the city of Fayetteville, that, a lot of our departments have picked up in where they didn't really want to use digital tools that much, that they've actually learned to embrace them. And I just want to kind of go over overview with that. And then towards the end, or if you have any questions in between, just let me know. But I'm really interested to seeing how other municipalities and counties and school districts use some of the tools that they already had in place during the pandemic, and then what you're going to use going forward. So just like all the rest of you, during the pandemic, hopefully my thing is going to move here. Oh, here we go. The city of Fayetteville faced its share of challenges, that's for sure. Especially our day-to-day operations were thrown out of whack when COVID hit. Remote working was very minimal for the city of Fayetteville. We only had a select few people that was doing it, and then the whole masses that had to be sent home to work, and the working and learning situations that we had to go through, not just for our IT staff, but also for our end users. It was a learning curve. The technology support that we had to have, with our network systems and making sure that we had enough hardware and things like that. And I want to talk about some of those challenges as I go along in the presentation. Our security, what is this going to do with our security posture when we send the masses home and some things are out of our reach? And then also I want to talk about some of the solutions and the innovative ways that we've actually used our digital technologies that's right in front of us, how we became with the people that picked it up and used it, the processes that we changed, some of the processes that we had in place that aided us while we're in this pandemic, and the different technologies that we're planning to keep and move, going forward. So just like I said, I want to talk about what were some of our challenges, and I'm sure our challenges are very much the same as some of you guys have faced. How we became innovative using the digital tools that we had before us, some of the transformations that we've gone through, and then the lessons learned through this pandemic. Challenges. By far, equipment was definitely one of the city of Fayetteville's challenges. We scrambled when COVID hit. We faced multiple challenges, like most of you did. The first thing was, where are we going to get enough computers and phones to send employees home to work with? Or better yet, do we have enough MiFis to send people home that don't have Wi-Fi in their actual homes? We had several people that didn't even have Wi-Fi in their homes. So we had to ensure that they could still work remotely. And so we had to make sure to gather up all of that equipment. Then we thought, is our network infrastructure, able to handle the increased load of new demands and still remain reliable and optimal for our end users as they work remotely as well on premise, because we had some that just could not go and work remotely. We also had the issue with remote access, the challenges that we faced there with people going home. Some went home, like I said, with MiFis and trying to get that connected and trying to troubleshoot those issues. Was it something that was going on with their internet at their home? Or was there something going on with the MiFi? Is our network not capable of handling this? Or these slowdowns that they're experiencing at home, is it due to our network? I was one that actually faced slowdowns, and I worked from home before the pandemic. I always took my computer home and remoted back into the system to work on servers, to work on applications. And I noticed a tremendous slowdown, and I kept accusing Sprint, who I had, that, you know, they're just throttling everything back. Well, come to find out, I was on DSL and I really needed to get off of that. So even though I was complaining to our network team that our system was slow based on all the workload that was being handled onto our network, when actuality, it was actually my home system, and I had to make a change in order for it to work properly. We also, you know, had challenges with resources. So IT had just had to adjust quickly in supporting a hybrid operation, remote and on-prem. There were some employees that could not work from home, such as police, fire, transit, some in engineering. They're still on-prem, but then we had the masses that went home. And on top of getting a productive virtual environment up and running, IT still had to work on day-to-day operations, as well as projects that were in full execution prior to COVID. For example, we were right in the middle of a rollout for new computers for our police force as well as our fire department. That was come to a screeching halt, but then there was a kind of a blessing in disguise there because we were doing that rollout, we were able to get the older computers that we were getting from PD and actually give those to people to go home with to work remotely. So it was an exchange. Give them a new computer, get the laptop, give it to someone, get it cleaned up, give it to someone so that they could take it home and they can start working remotely. So that was kind of a blessing in disguise that we were in the middle of that. But needless to say, that caused its challenges as well of continuing with projects as well as trying to get people home to work virtually. Training the end users on how to operate new technology, such as Zoom. They were thrown into the world of virtualization. That became a little scary at times, trying to get end users how to set up a meeting, how to actually, you know, make security was on their video conferencings as well as their meetings. The challenge of getting our city council and using Zoom and from their homes, or if they were in the building and trying to share space and how to do that. That was a challenge for us. It may not have been for some of you guys, but that was an actual challenge. And it's still a challenge to this day, getting these, you know, end users that didn't really embrace digital technology to embrace it. So we had to overhaul that, you know, overcome that hurdle as well. Then, of course, is always the overlooming security challenge. If that wasn't enough with all the other stuff, we also had to look at was, you know, going home safe with virtualization. How do we control data? Even though they can be on our VPN system, but we can still have, you know, data leakages that's going on from the home. Or is there anything that's going on computers and in their home if they jump on and use a home computer versus using their remote computer that they were sent home with? So there was always that we were looking at as far as security goes too, because we all know that remote work always allows for data to no longer be kept within the business walls, which possesses a risk of data leakage all within itself. I'm sure many of you had to face that. Then we had the overarching challenge of management that thought that IT should police their employees. They were sending their employees home. They expected them to work at home just like they worked in the office. And that's a challenge because a lot of people were sent home, but they also had their children at home and still do have their children at home. So their work schedule or their work time and how they're getting things done changed. So if you had a parent that was home and they had a small child that was home and they had to help them with schoolwork, they weren't coming in at 8 o'clock and getting on a VPN and right at 8 and getting off at 5 and staying on. Their work schedules had to change. So we were constantly getting requests that said, hey, I need to know if this employee logged in. And can you tell me what time they logged in? And they expect, and then that policing from IT, which we were like, we're not the virtual police. You just going to have to, trust that your employees are doing exactly what they should do and making sure that their job is actually getting done. So, innovations. So, needless to say, the pandemic has been a reality check for many businesses, not just municipalities and counties, but businesses worldwide, especially for those that have been reluctant to embrace digital technologies to repurpose their standard usage. For those that have made strides with the change, digitization has bridged the gap left by mandated shutdowns, social distancing procedures, excuse me. Without digital tools and technologies, many industries would have come to a crawl because they would have no way of operating certain functions for their business. And when I say digital tools, I'm talking about your everyday laptop, your computer, your cell phone, tablets, your video platforms, whether you were using Zoom or WebEx or Teams. Prior to the pandemic, our laptop was used just for that. We come in, or computers, we come in, that's what we work on, and we leave. Well, just like I mentioned earlier, that laptop became a way a person had to work that maybe not had a laptop in their home at all, or a computer, or even have Wi-Fi, or they just were not accustomed to that. They were accustomed to coming into their job, working on a computer, and going home, and Wi-Fi was just a second thought. Cell phones, how we use cell phones to change the way that we do business. Tablets, we've actually had to use tablets in multiple departments to change the way we do business, to collect data for different functions that the departments were collecting, maybe manually, but now had to change to collect that digitally. Video platforms, Zoom. Right before the pandemic happened, the city of Fayetteville was launching Zoom. And then we went into full-blown Zoom craze, I guess you want to say that, to the point of changing now all of our conference rooms to Zoom rooms. Because just like we said, there's some that can work remotely, but then there's some that have to come in and they have to work on-prem, but we still have to have that social distancing. And if they're not able to have that meeting at their desk, then they can go into a conference room and social distance and still be able to attend the meeting virtually. It became very apparent that the digital and automate processes that the city put into place once this pandemic happened aided in keeping certain functions afloat while we waited and continue to wade through this pandemic. We had to become creative with the tools that we have in place. Sure, did we have to purchase, additional licenses for things? Did we have to purchase different additional resources for our servers to carry the workload of, virtualization? We did have to do that, but we also had to become creative in how we were using some of the tools or not using the tools at all. In our development services department, I want to spotlight them because this was a group of men, the inspectors, that didn't really want to embrace technology at all. They like going out and doing their inspections and having their paper in their hand and doing inspections the old-fashioned way. Yes, they have a computer, But they, not to the degree that we were saying now, this is how you're going to have to use this digital tool. But they embraced it. They took it. They carried, came up with some neat ways to get their work done. And one of the ways that they did this was using the GIS tool, which is another digital tool, was Survey 123. So they had our GIS team come up with a survey for them to collect data on the non-compliance, to gauge the non-compliant business signs based on the North Carolina COVID restrictions. So they needed to find out which businesses were in compliance, which businesses were not. So they got with the GIS team. They actually mapped all of this out. When they got finished mapping and putting all the data in, they were able to create this dashboard to see just how many violations we had in the city of Fayetteville using that GIS tool. Was it a learning curve for some? Of course. But it's a tool that has been effective that now they can go out and still do their code inspections as they should, and not miss a beat. Okay, they're code inspectors. They're supposed to, enforce restrictions. Enforce the laws that the city of Fayetteville has in place, and to include the state. And we've had several businesses that were not in compliance. And this was one way for them to go out, look at that dashboard, take a cursory look, and go visit the businesses that were not in compliant or still not in compliant by using a simple survey with a GIS tool. Another way that our development services is using, I really want to spotlight how they're using the system. And I'm really proud of this department because, like I said, they didn't want to embrace technology that much at all. But they have. And with them, with it, though it may seem counterintuitive for them, the crisis was the ideal time for them to double down on digital innovation. This pandemic was a way for them to see things a little bit different. It bred ingenuity, and good ideas was put into practice, and it propelled their business practices and work processes. So for this, what they started, which I thought was really that they told me that the idea came down from the state, but they embraced it. Even though the state could say, "Hey, you can do this," that doesn't mean that you're going to embrace it. But they did. They took that chance and they embraced doing what it was called live rice, which I didn't know what that meant, but they said it was for remote inspections and code enforcements using virtual technology. And it rose to the point of where Spectrum News caught wind of this, and they actually did a feature on our inspectors that how it works using this virtual world that we're living in. And I want to just kind of show you, it's going to be about a 2-minute clip, but I want to show you how that virtual inspection actually works. Let me move this over this way so that hopefully you guys can see it. If you can't see it, let me know in the chat. Also, I hope you can hear it.
This is the fun part of the job. This is Roy Cathy. He's an HVAC inspector. For him, going into the small crawl space at this Fayetteville home is fun.
Let me get some light going here.
Roy's installing a split heat pump. In other words, an HVAC system that's divided inside and outside the home.
We've developed a series of questions that, I know they're going to ask, and we just go down the line. They're looking for 4 to 5 major things to make sure that the unit is installed properly and safely.
Normally, he'd be joined by a city inspector in this crawl space, but due to the coronavirus, not anymore. The city of Fayetteville came up with a program called Live Rights, or Live Remote Inspections and Code Enforcement. Roy is using a video chat service to show this city inspector what's going on.
I feel like they are down there with me because whatever they need to see, all I have to do is point the camera in the direction and we get the information required for them to get the inspection done.
Going virtual works for homeowners too. The inspector physically has to be at the job site, but the homeowner or inspector can request a virtual meeting to avoid contact during this time.
It's a little different from doing it, putting your own eyes on it, but this is just as good as putting your own eyes on it because we got to see the video.
Once the contractor is done, the inspector decides if the job passes or not. In this case, it did. The inspector then saves a picture showing proof of work, like this working thermostat.
I got to give the city of Fayetteville a lot of credit for making the best of a bad situation, and the customers appreciate it a lot as well.
In Fayetteville, Jared Thompson, Spectrum News.
Okay, so that's just a little spotlight of how ingenuity in the development services department, they just took those tools, those digital tools, while we're living in this pandemic world, for a department that really didn't care to embrace technology, they're embracing it, and we're learning from that. So also during the pandemic, we realized that a lot of the automation things that we had put in place has actually aided and helped us. And to the degree that it has helped us, that we are looking at even more ways to automate more things in the city of Fayetteville so that we can be more productive. We've noticed that, some departments that didn't have a lot of automation, they still had to come in and they still had to grab their manual papers and then go home and work and come back in and print and do certain things. Whereas some of the automations that we had put in place, we didn't miss a beat. For example, our contract routing process, it had been in place since, I want to say 2015, but we didn't miss a beat with contracts coming in. We could still get contracts submitted. We could still get them reviewed. We could still get them approved, signed off on, pre-audited. We could use, and what we use for contract routing is Laserfish. We use Laserfish forms, and we have a workflow that goes from each person as if we used to hand walk this through, but we automated that, and we never missed a contract being signed. So we didn't have to come up with something on the fly to still continue to have contracts come in and continue to have things come in with our CIPs, with our capital improvement contracts. We had a lot of construction going on. We were still able to continue to do that work. Our technology request forms. So several years ago, we automated that, which when someone has a technology request, whether it's for user access, for software request or new software, new hardware, if they're going to move in the building some kind of way, if they need a new proxy card, whatever the technology request should be, we automated that process. And once that goes through the workflow, it hits our ticketing system and it creates a help desk ticket. And then that's assigned to whoever that ticket is pertaining to, whether it's hardware, software, user access, which would go to maybe our business intelligence team, our network team, our application specialist. We were still able to have requests come in. We were still able to fulfill those requests, even though we were working probably 80% remote. Those things were still able, that function and that process was still able to go forward. Another one with PD, they have a lot of purchase requests that they actually put in. And right before the pandemic happened, we had launched their request for purchase. And that also has a workflow and an approval process with an electronic signature. So they were still able to put their request for purchase in. They were still able to send it through the workflow for review and for approval and for electronic signatures. And those three items that I'm featuring there were all done with Laserfish and Laserfish forms, something that we already had on-prem that we use to be more digitally and creative. With that being said, there was one project that I didn't get to before the pandemic. We were just about done, and that was automating our approvals and sign-offs for invoicing. And probably about July timeframe, the chief financial officer said, I wish that was one thing that we had done. It would have saved us a lot of time if we had already automated that process of getting, an invoice in, the invoice is reviewed, the invoice is signed off on in the different ways that it's signed off on, and checks to be cut. But we're working on that one. That's one of the ones that we'll definitely work on and get that moving during the pandemic, and we'll have, post-pandemic as well as a process that we will stand up. So transformation. So when I think of transformation, I'm thinking, okay, remember when I said we had some that didn't really care to use their cell phones? Their cell phone was just to answer it and say hello, goodbye, send a text here or there, but not to work with. So we had that group. Then, how do we transform that group to say, technology, when used correctly, is good? You can actually use these tools. You can use your tablets, you can use your cell phones, you can use your laptops and things like that to get your daily processes completed in a manner that's quicker in some aspects. And you don't have to be sitting in the office to get these things done. You can still get your work done using these digital tools. So I was doing research on before this, speaking today to you, just to find out just how businesses were using digital tools. And I found a survey or research that said, according to Owl Labs, before the pandemic, only 30% of US employees worked remotely, 100% of the time. For the other 70%, the transition to working remote full time has been quite a shock. And it has been. It was a shock when you send everybody home, when you have parents going home with children and children are having to work, do school remotely and virtually. That has been a challenge all within itself of embracing during this pandemic. I think we're getting a little better with embracing it, but it's still very hard. But on the bright side, with such a high percentage of the working population now remote, which we are, it's becoming a way of life, digital collaboration is improving in leaps and bounds. If you could see, when we first got onto Zoom, it was not great security wise. It was for most industries. And now that collaboration with, hey, let's get this done. This is not secure. We need another different platform, WebEx, and all the other video conferencing type of software applications. They've had to improve it. They had to improve that so that we stay safe as we work remote. The sophistication of the tools are changing. I love the idea of the Zoom rooms. Going into a conference room, I can take my computer or I can have it here at the desk or go into a Zoom room, still proceed in the meeting. I like those ideas. Those things are coming about because of the world that we're living in right now. And also, workers are feeling a level of comfort with those, as being in a Zoom room or being in a Zoom meeting, being in a WebEx. When we first went to having to do virtual meetings every day, that was, maybe it was for me, that was the most annoying thing ever, because it seems like people can actually call a Zoom meeting at a drop of a dime and not, I guess because they think you're sitting at home, then, hey, we can have a meeting. But that we are having to get comfortable with that and say, okay, even though we're working from home or we're working remote, we still need to have some type of protocol in place. Don't just put me in a meeting just because you think I'm home doing it, nothing. Look at our school systems, from elementary through graduate programs. They're a great testament of embracing digital tools. Even the medical field has embraced the changes by providing virtual doctor's visits. Who would have thought that you would have a doctor's appointment and you would do it all through virtualization? We're living definitely in a different world. The stock exchange, when I was doing some research and I realized that the stock exchange has entirely doing trading online. This is the world that we're living in. But look at the how they had to embrace digital technology to get that done. Some of our most successful transformations, I would say here with the city of Fayetteville, projects started as pilots. Because of the pandemic, hey, let's try this. And during this pandemic, with limited resources and funding, we took off, and we'll grow those things. We have come up with other ideas of how to actually grow it even more, and I embrace that, and I think that's a success for us, that we embrace the digital change. We look at how we can start things small, and then as we go into a post-pandemic world, which we will one day, we'll come out the better for it, and we will have learned how to use things and be much wiser in the actual tools that we have before us, and how we can use those and be creative. While some businesses will revert back to their traditional models before the crisis, others may opt to still be in a hybrid approach and use that. And I don't think that we'll go back, even in government, the way that it used to be. Because now government was the hardest to embrace remote or virtual, sending people home and working remotely. And they see now that it can work. So I do believe that we are here to stay in a hybrid world, no matter what. That's just my thinking. You may think differently. Your municipality or your county, or the state, that if you're working for the state, you might think differently. But I can see now that we've done it for so long and it's working, that we probably will stay in a hybrid state at the city of Fayetteville. So what are some of the lessons that we learned? Of course, the coronavirus is permanently reshaping the way we live and work. Some of the behaviors developed in this crisis, including the wide-scale digital adoption, will outlast the pandemic. I believe that, and I think that even more so. It's easy for us tech heads to say that's in technology, to say, well, I can't believe that people would not embrace technology, but they're seeing the value in it, that it will be a wide scale adoption in all industries. And we've seen it, the school system, the medical field, in government, we're seeing that adoption. The innovations that our businesses create out of necessity, which we're in, can become lasting pillars that will help it to thrive well beyond this pandemic, well beyond. And like I said, I've got projects now that are stacking up because they saw what technology could do for their business processes. We'll be improving on processes. I think we'll be in process improvement for a while, even after the pandemic. So digital transformation is more necessary during this crisis than ever, and we're seeing that. Our development services department, our inspections, they saw that in order to continue to work, you're going to have to do something different. But that doesn't mean it will take, I'm sorry, it doesn't mean that they have to, it has to look the same as it did before the pandemic. So just because I asked the inspector that you saw in the clip there, I asked him, I said, do you think when the pandemic is over that you will continue to do virtual inspections? Would that be something that you would continue to do? And he said, yeah, we will. He said, we're going to leave it up to the customer to decide if they want us to do a virtual inspection. And so they said they would definitely be a hybrid, which would be very beneficial for them to send, the contractors out there. They do just like you saw in the clip, homeowners that are kind of leery of letting people into their homes. They said they would do that, and a lot of the customers are embracing that. So I can see that's something that will stay. So as we look at resources in terms of both employees and funding, will likely be constrained right now, funding, a lot of this pandemic has eaten into a lot of budgets, for sure. Even though it's the digital transformation roadmap that does not deliver right now, it can still be incremental. You can still make small changes, even if you don't have all the resources in place, even though you may not have all the funding in place. Um, you could do it in increments. And when the funding comes about, then add that to, remember we talked about that pilot. This is a pilot. This is what we're going to do. Um, so we may not have been able to put a phone in every inspector's hand, but now we know in our next budget season, we need to have a phone in every inspector's hand because virtual inspections is going to be here to stay. The key is continuing to experiment and innovate with digital solutions. Front and center to aid employees in embracing change, improve work processes, and advance technology. With the right approach, businesses can come out of the pandemic stronger and more agile than before. I bet many of you did not think that you would be in this place and that we would have to embrace technology in such a way so that we could actually do our day to day operations. We are more dependent on technology now than we have ever been before. And everyone is seeing it, and every industry is seeing it. So that, I mean, the lessons learned for us is that, we need to continue to be innovative. Not just, don't let a pandemic stop you from being innovative. Don't do that. Embrace change. Change is coming. Change is not always a bad thing. Change is good in a lot of cases, and we're starting to see that. To improve your work processes, look and see what you can do that technology can actually improve. We have a lot of processes that we can automate. We just need to embrace that change and work on it and get that done. And then also, as technology advances, jump on those advancements and use them for your benefit. And don't just let a pandemic be the reason why, but be thinking, as technology advances, what if we get back into this situation again? Now, as a project manager, what I'm looking at is a risk. I never once in all of my years of being a project manager put a pandemic as a risk. Maybe a hurricane, maybe a flood. We live near train tracks. It could have been, I had a train derail one time as a risk on my risk registry, never a pandemic. But I guess what? I've changed my mind. I may say, well, a pandemic may happen. It may be low or maybe medium, but it's a possibility. And if that happens, what's my mitigation strategy in getting this project still completed and done? So this is just kind of like a light presentation that they've asked me to do. I did something for GMIS and wanted to spotlight what Fayetteville is doing with automation. We have a lot more automated forms, but I'm not going to bore you guys with that. I'm really interested in knowing, and hopefully I have different industries in here, how you are using your technology or what propelled you to change your technology to keep your processes going. So I'm not sure, Soraya? Is it Soraya, our host?
It's Soraya, yeah.
Okay, I want to kind of open it up and see if anyone has, or they can just tell me if they can put it in the chat or if they can talk, I'm not sure, how they actually embrace this digital world that we're in technology and how they had to advance some things in where they work. Not sure how much time I have. I should have time, yeah. Does anyone have anything?
45, so we're good.
Okay. Questions? How you changed? Was there a department that had to change? How did your end users? How did they embrace working from home? What challenges did you face? Are you awake? You sleeping? They're quiet. It's late.
Yeah, Walter Smith said everyone wanted a laptop.
Huh?
Walter Smith said everyone wanted a laptop.
Oh, yeah. And they still do, even when they come back into the office, they want a laptop instead of their desktop that they had. That's a good one. So with Walter, were you guys able to supply everyone with a laptop that went home remotely? Can't tell if he's typing or not. Any other? Oh, maybe Walter left.
Maybe.
There's still quite a bit. There's still 25 people here. Anyone else can tell me how they, what challenges they faced when the pandemic happened and how you overcame that? No? Okay. Well, I appreciate everyone that came to listen to me, kind of like babble on today, but I did want to spotlight, our inspections department, like I said, who was definitely technology challenged, but they embraced it and show you that, even during a pandemic, that we can be innovative and embrace technology, and our end users are capable of embracing change with technology and learning and doing things, to keep their business functions afloat even during a pandemic, and then also how it opened up their eyes to say, you know what, technology is not all bad. It really actually helped me to continue to do the work that I need to do and get things done. So hopefully you guys learned a little bit. You saw the spotlight on Fayetteville. I know that you guys are doing great things as well. If you have any questions, just let me know. You can always, email membershipchair@NCLGISA.org. I'll be sure to answer your questions back. And hopefully I'll see many of you tonight at our social hour. Thank you for attending.
Yep, just before we go, Willie Johnson says, great job, Melissa, and Matt says thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.